Welcome. This is Michael Raffini from the TeacherCast Academy, and today we're going to learn about the Battle of the Bulge. As Allied forces moved toward Germany from the west, the Soviet army was advancing toward Germany from the east. Hitler now faced a war on two fronts. In a desperate gamble, he decided to counterattack in the west. Hitler hoped a victory would split American and British forces and break up Allied supply lines. Hitler said, "This battle is to decide whether we shall live or die. All resistance must be broken in a wave of terror." The Germans' objective was to reverse the course of events by striking through the Ardennes, crossing the river Meuse, and retaking the port of Antwerp, which had been reopened to shipping. The Germans wanted to split the British and American forces in half. They hoped this would isolate the British Army from U.S. forces and result in a separate peace on the Western Front that would be favorable to the Axis powers. The poor weather, snow, bitter cold, and dense fog grounded Allied aircraft and greatly aided the German advance. The Allies had poor resources, such as dwindling supplies of food, ammo, clothes, and reinforcements. The Germans had problems getting fuel for their tanks as the battle progressed. Those first few days, many U.S. troops were overrun or surrendered, yet the Americans put up a strong resistance in many areas, and within 3 days powerful reinforcements arrived. In the snow, with temperatures below freezing, the Germans failed to reach the Meuse River. Their tactical objective was no longer Antwerp, but Bastogne. The Germans failed to capture the strategic town of Bastogne. Combined with winter weather, fierce fighting, rough terrain, and superior Allied air power, the offensive was eventually contained around December 25th, and the Germans were forced to retreat over the Rhine and into Germany itself. On December 16, 1944, over 20 German divisions broke through weak American defenses along a 75-mile front in the densely forested Ardennes mountain region of Wallonia, which is situated in Belgium, France, and Luxembourg on the Western Front. The battle lasted through January 25, 1945, and was the largest land battle in the history of the U.S. The U.S. Army began an epic 44-day struggle between Americans and Germans. The Battle of the Bulge got its name because the German attack on the American lines pushed the Americans many miles back in one area, resulting in a bulge in the front lines in Belgium. They caught the Allies by surprise, as American commanders thought the Ardennes was the least likely location for a German offensive. Even though Allied air reconnaissance took many pictures of the battlefields, Allied photo analysis failed to spot Germany's buildup of over 20 divisions of men and machinery. The U.S. kept the line thin, concentrating manpower on offensives north and south of the Ardennes region. The Allies and the Germans were relatively equal in strength. The American forces had between 500,000 to 840,000 infantry, 1,300 tanks and tank destroyers, and 394 artillery guns. The Germans had between 300,000 to 500,000 infantry, 1,800 tanks, and 1,900 artillery guns. The Battle of the Bulge was the bloodiest of the battles that U.S. forces experienced in World War II. The 19,000 American dead were unsurpassed by those of any other engagement. British losses totaled 1,400. The German High Command's official figure for the campaign was 84,834 casualties, and other estimates ranged between 60,000 and 100,000. There were many great American commanders in the Battle of the Bulge. They included General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who was the supreme Allied commander; General Omar Bradley, commander of the 12th U.S. Army; General Courtney Hodges, commander of the 1st U.S. Army; General George S. Patton, commander of the 3rd U.S. Army; and General Anthony Nuts McAuliffe, commander of the 101st Airborne Division. The Battle of the Bulge was an important battle because it was Germany's last offensive on the Western Front. The battle was a very ambitious plan, and while initially successful, the surprise German counteroffensive stalled by the end of December 1944. Allied victory at the Bulge prevented the Allied armies from being split. Germans were forced to retreat over the Rhine and into Germany itself with defeat imminent. In May of 1945, Germany surrendered unconditionally. Europe celebrated Victory in Europe Day, and a costly war had finally ended. Let's take a look at some important facts about the Battle of the Bulge. The battle took place on December 16, 1944 through January 25, 1945, in the densely forested Ardennes mountain region. The Germans attacked on the American lines and pushed the Americans many miles back in one area, resulting in a bulge, hence the name Battle of the Bulge. The battle was a surprise attack by the Germans. The Germans wanted to split the British and American forces in half. They hoped this would isolate the British Army from U.S. forces. The strengths of both the Allies and the Germans were relatively equal. The Battle of the Bulge was the bloodiest of the battles that U.S. forces experienced in World War II. The 19,000 American dead were unsurpassed by those of any other engagement. British losses totaled 1,400. The German High Command's figure for the campaign was 84,834 casualties. American generals included Eisenhower, Bradley, Hodges, Patton, and McAuliffe. The battle was important because it was the last major offensive by German troops in World War II. We have explored the Battle of the Bulge in this presentation. Now let's take a look at a History Channel video clip on a summary of key events on the Battle of the Bulge.
During the Bulge, command broke down, supplies broke down, morale broke down, communications broke down, everything broke down. It was every man for himself. We were inadequately clothed. We didn't have rubber overshoes, we didn't have overcoats, we didn't have gloves, we didn't have scarves. My boots were so bad, I would strip newspapers and drapery off of these bombed out houses and wrap my feet in it. You were having trouble breathing because the snow was suffocating you. And consequently, we lost a lot of men who froze to death.